So the midline has a cooperative system of like innervation. The mouth in being able to mew and being able to pressurize. So it's why a lot of us will bite or make faces when we're doing something of force. We'll do that shit. It's because we don't have a pressurized midline or jaw. The gums are not experiencing that like smile pressure. When you smile, you'll feel that almost elevation of the jaw. And even if it's just a slight, like right at the corners, like you're just trying to show people your canines, enough of that, it brings us up into that trigeminal space and gives us a cooperative system of awareness. Like the base is founded for us to not have to focus everything in the moving system, which is the same. This guy corresponds with the intra-abdominal pressure, and then the palate corresponds with the pelvic floor. And if we don't have it's not tension, because tensioning the 2 points, you could have a lot of missed spots. But if you have the whole pressure, just like if you're breastfeeding, mewing, you establish what is the constructive way in which we mitigate the prolapse of our throat or the collapse of our throat under the load of pressure or weight, whatever it may be, the panic effort. And if we can keep all that down, we're going to have way less issue with that in and up. If we start to alleviate those symptoms at the head first, we alleviate the construct downward. And when we think about like, this is the seed, and the brain doesn't have sensation, but the skull and the surrounding neurology does. And so we're not trying to perceive our brain, we're trying to perceive the vehicle. And if we perceive the vehicle relative how it grows from here downward, and you think about like the biggest roots being those vagal roots, then the vagal nerves, then we start to occupy the ears, and the space therein are being compressed by the jaw. And so the ears are shrinking. The ears are also being pulled forward because there's less scalp involvement. There's not enough like actual shit going on with their face. There's just too much tension happening. They're creating a constrictive measure of like, I need to focus with tension, as opposed to space and potentiating peripheral nerve input. And so when we get this guy to separate, then we start to evaluate, there's a backside that's been tucking into it and compressing our vagal flow. And the whole way down is the same. That's why most of us are very narrow. We could be very wide, but we're most often very flat. So we're like a very two-dimensional front and back.
Yeah.
And we try to rotate around our small measure of allowance, but it's really our throat that's the allowance, because we want to engorge around the one thing that is singular, as opposed to try to make these things so smart that this thing catches up.
This episode of Monkey Bars is sponsored by the Mewing with Movmed online course that you can get right now at movemed.net. If you want to be guided through the applications of some of the theories that we talk about on this podcast, this is going to be a great place for you. And just in general, if you're dealing with any neck pain, jaw pain, or headaches, or just anything upper body related, getting this stuff to feel more connected will probably change the outcomes and the effectiveness of everything else that you're doing. So check it out, Mewing with Movmed online course.
You'll feel your crown start to spread when you can adequately move. So what you're seeing when I do this is me moving the end range of my scalp. What you're seeing when I do this is the same. See how these guys moved a little bit?
Yeah.
So these guys are a little bit low, or my head is still a little bit at this, and that's why they'll move transiently when the bigger motion moves the greater. I want to be bigger in my temple, and I've not gotten there yet. So it's a weird notion to think we're going to grow our skulls, but the pressure we start with here and we can tolerate or equalize like that without exhaling or reducing, that's improving our impact tolerance. So like our ability to create impact threshold, I guess. The more pressure we have inside of us, the less we are to be reduced by whatever's molding us, whatever forceful environment's molding us. So we don't want to have tension. We want to have pressure to maintain our integrity, because our visceral body, when it's the viscous nature of blood, when it's under oxygenic load, is just like it's way more pliable like you're falling into something you'd want to fall into and not falling into metal if you're getting into a car accident. So that's the nature of being pliable or parasympathetic. The priority points, mewing is a huge one for like the palate, but most people aren't very well versed in mewing, in that creating pressure to dialogue it down. We're just trying to dialogue through the throat. That's the priority. If we can dialogue through the throat, then we can negate some of the pressure we probably live in at our temples. And then when we can negate that, we can start to increase upon the amount of like suction that allows for us to be more active past our midline and into our posterior. And when we're laterally active and our posterior is more active, then we're going to start to feel the engorgement of the muscles that connect. But for the time being, most of us have spent, for me, I'm 26, I've spent 18 years with a lack of motion in some parts of my skull. And being as sensitive as I am, I still have a bunch of deficits that I'm still working through, to say that most of us are probably deficit irrespective of what our potential is or how big we can be. And when we engorge our body to the point that it's supposed to be at, or the blueprint is meant to be at, then our brain no longer has the that like disordered behavior where it feels like there's, why do I have the ADHD feeling or the whatever, when there's a lack of coherence or integrity about the inputs, there's going to be a measure of mess about what all the things you're trying to write down and take notes on, because you don't know where to put all that stuff. And when it all starts to reorder, a lot of that stuff starts to recondition.
I feel like mewing, at least the way that it's been presented by like the Mr. Mew himself, Dr. Mew, is very much, I don't necessarily get the intention of downward from the way he presents it. It seems like everything's up, lift the palate, spread the palate, like use a tongue. There's not really I guess there might be some of the like imagine you're trying to suck or whatever, or suck on your tongue that with it, but it doesn't really communicate the downward intention very well.
Yeah, because it's mostly a dry and anaerobic thing that they're suggesting. It's like a posture thing. Same way, stick your chest up, shoulders back kind of stuff. And it's not making you know how to feel your way through it as much as it is trying to paint a picture for people that aren't hugely sensitive or aware enough of the anatomy, I suppose. Your eyes are a pretty good indicator of the pressure that you have or don't have in your body. Like if you have a difficulty turning your eyes and not like you fixing your gaze and the like and moving around it, if you have shortened periphery, those two things are pretty good ways to assess how big your midline or your awareness of your breath is. Because in the aspect of breathing inward, and you take a good breath, you're increasing the pressure to your eyes, and it doesn't feel good to be focal or tense through something that is increasing in pressure. So it should inherently bring more attention to how the changes of pressure to your body change the allowance for your eyes to stay focused. So most people are looking for a lot of inputs when they inhale because their eyes are no longer focused. And that's usually the time where they're like, I really want to focus. The exhale is when they get more of it, but they're rushing back to the thing that gives them an internal map when they're trying to find an extrinsic one. Panic is the thing people need to associate. Panic, like people need to know how to respond to stimulus, large or small, friendly or non-friendly, in a way that makes it so that they're assessing the information, not being undressed by it and made to feel very uncomfortable.